everyone, and welcome to Real Life NPCs. I'm Jackie, and this is a little series we like to call NPCs Running D&D. Throughout this series, I'm going to be taking you through all sorts of tutorials and tips for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Today, we're going to start out simple with one of the core mechanics of the game, ability scores. Ability scores are a set of 6 numbers that denote how talented a particular character, NPC, or monster is in a particular stat. The 6 stat categories in D&D are Strength, Dexterity, Constitution, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. Real quick, let's go over what each stat actually does before we get into how the ability scores themselves work. First up is Strength. Strength is your character's ability to push, pull, lift, and hit things with most melee weapons. It's a pretty core stat for a lot of classes, including barbarians, fighters, and paladins, depending on how you build them, of course. Next is Dexterity. This is how nimble your character is, and plays into things like initiative, armor class, and your ability to hit with ranged weapons. Constitution is how sturdy your character is, and deals with their hit points and ability to sustain against things like poison or drowning. Intelligence is your character's ability to think critically and reason out problems. This can also play into spellcasting for classes like Artificier and Wizard. Wisdom, on the other hand, is how well your character can understand and interpret the world around them, as well as how perceptive they are. Classes like Clerics use this for their spellcasting ability. Finally, Charisma is a broad ability that deals with how well you work with others. It includes your ability to lie, perform in front of groups, and convince them of your way of thinking. Bards, sorcerers, paladins all use charisma for their spellcasting. Now that we've covered your character's stat types, let's get into ability scores themselves. Every character has a score that is assigned to one of their 6 stats. Shown here, we have an example of a blank character sheet. As you can see, our stat types are listed here on the left-hand side. When we build a character, we end up with a set of ability scores to assign wherever we like. Each class has stats they benefit from more, which we'll cover in other videos. Each large ability score corresponds to a smaller ability score modifier. This chart shown here demonstrates what scores relate to what ability modifiers. Most of the time, you aren't actually going to use the large numbers in-game. The small numbers will be added to all sorts of places, including ability checks, saving throws, and attack rolls. Now, this is a bit of light debate among players, but personally, I like to put my modifier, the small number, into the larger box. It doesn't really matter either way, as long as you know which one is which. As you can see here on one of my own character sheets, our ability modifiers directly line up to the skills and such here on the right. I'll go into more detail about skill checks another time. Here's a few tips to remember when assigning your ability scores. The higher your larger number, the higher your modifier will be. Also, player scores cannot naturally go above 20, or a +5 modifier. There are a few set items in-game that can raise your ability scores over 20, but those are few and far between. Monsters, on the other hand, can very much have higher stats, going all the way up to a max of 30, or a +10 ability modifier. And that's pretty much the basics. Ability scores are essentially the core of the game, so this isn't the last time I'm going to bring them up. These basics are going to be something I refer back to often as this series continues. Thank you for joining me for this episode of NPCs Running D&D. If you have suggestions about what D&D tutorials you would like to see next, leave a comment below, and maybe I'll cover them. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.